I'd like to welcome everybody here on our Wednesday night AJ Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. To everybody who's here live with us on Zoom right now, watching live on Facebook, watching the recording on YouTube, or listening in tomorrow on J-Air. Tonight we are looking at the moral case for liberty. Everyone is for freedom, but what is it? And why is it good? Without building a moral case for freedom, we cannot really defend it. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Tal Tsfany, the CEO and president of the Ayn Rand Institute. He has a background as an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and to give you a bit of background on Ayn Rand, she was a leading thinker and author of the 20th century. Her books have sold more than 40 million copies and is a global movement around the world. Please welcome Tal, and if you've got any questions, Tal will be answering a Q&A later, so you can pop them in the chat or use the raise hand button, and we'll get to that later in the event. Thank you very much, and welcome, Tal.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. So I'll jump right into it. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you, Robert, for organizing. Thank you, David, and Tennille for having me here. I was in Australia for the first time last year, and the response to the tour that we had in Australia was phenomenal. So we decided to actually bring the first Ayn Rand conference to Australia. It's going to happen in December. If anyone is interested, December 6th to 8th this year in Brisbane. And we will try to bring Ayn Rand and her ideas closer to Australia, and hopefully that will bring some benefits like it does, I think, in the United States and other places. So I would like to introduce myself in a hopefully in an interesting way. I'll share my screen and I'll go very quickly through that. I'm going to try to keep my presentation as short as possible, although this is an issue that we can talk for hours about. And another thing I will ask you to do is just for this hour, just try to, in a way, think a little differently than you usually do, because there are concepts and some ideas that might be new, might be challenging. And I always try to get to the truth in everything that I do. So I try to open my mind when I'm presented with a little bit of a different viewpoint. So here we go. So I was born in Israel. I was born into a conservative family. At 6 years old, I was born in Beersheba in the south of Israel. My grandmother asked me to put the yarmulke on. And I was a very serious kid, a kid that asked a lot of questions, why, everything. And one of the questions I had is, why should I put the yarmulke on? And then we had a whole debate about God and the existence of God and the Jewish God and what he wanted me to do, and the laws and the Ten Commandments and so on. And I was really interested and fascinated with the idea. I remember going into my uncle's room and having a discussion with God about who he is and what he's trying to do. Why should I put the kippah on, and so on and so forth. And after a lot of deliberation, I made some of a commotion by going back to my grandmother and saying, I'm not going to put the kippah on unless I see God. And that created a big issue for me. But that was kind of the beginning of my introduction to philosophy. Fast forward, at 9 years old, I moved to a place called a kibbutz. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're following what's going on in Israel, you know what an Israeli kibbutz is. It was an attempt by Jews coming from Russia to now make communism work in Israel. And so at 9 years old, my mother and father decided that it's going to be a good idea to move to a kibbutz. So suddenly at 9 years old, I'm moving to a kibbutz with my sister and my parents, and I'm separated from my parents. I live in a kid's house because I'm not the property of my parents anymore. I'm the property of the kibbutz. And I'm living this communist heaven called the kibbutz. And to be honest, as a kid, it was quite fun. You get to live with your friends, and everything is equal. Who cares? We got to work, get up very early in the morning, work. That was great. I think it did a lot of good to my education. But then communism hit me in the face when at 13, I got a tape recorder from my bar mitzvah, from my family in the city. And so a day later, my teacher comes into my room and says, "I have to take it away." And I said, "What do you mean, take it away?" He said, "Yeah, we don't have private property, if you didn't get that, and it's not equal to the other kids." And I argued, and I said, "Over my dead body, you're taking this. It's mine. I love my music. I love my cassettes. You're not taking it away." Anyway, he decided not to take it away, came back a week later saying, "We had a committee. And in that committee, we decided that you can keep it if you let all of the other kids play their cassettes on your tape." And I said, "Fine." Of course, nobody touched it. And then I went to my parents and convinced them to leave the kibbutz. Long story short, throughout my teenage years, I grappled with philosophy about what is good and what is bad. Who gets to decide it? Is it my life? Is it the tribe's life? Is it the kibbutz's life? Is it good to be selfish? Is it bad to be selfish? Care about myself and care about others? Is there a word that describes the fact that I want to care about myself and care about others that is not selfish? Anyway, I was really interested in what is true and what is false, and what is objective versus what is subjective. I found that in everything that had to do with the material sciences, when we wanted to send people to the moon, we are very, very precise. We want to know exactly what's right. We want to make sure that our experiments work. We want to make sure that our math makes sense. We want to make sure that we don't make any mistake. But when it comes to the heart, the matters of the heart, the matters of our consciousness, the matter of values, who knows? Who knows? Everybody believes. I've talked to rabbis. I've talked to communist philosophers. I've talked to people who told me so many different things. And it seems that in the world of philosophy, morals, it's all subjective. If you're born a Jewish kid, that you should believe in God, in the Jewish God. If you were born 20 kilometers to the west, then you're an Arab kid who believes in something completely different. Who knows? And the result of all of that confusion is what I call being pragmatic. Just saying, the hell with values. You just do whatever works, which unfortunately is what a lot of people run on as an operating system. So I was very pragmatic. Although I was a very intellectual kid, I chose the material sciences, because in the material sciences, I was sure that if I go to a lecture on a Monday and 1 and 1 equals 2, then the same would happen on a lecture on Wednesday. When I tried to take some courses in humanities, one student would say A, I would say B, and the professor would say you're both right in some way, and I couldn't understand. Anyway, I lived with that very pragmatic worldview until I was 40, which was 13 years ago. I'm 53 right now. And at 40 years old, I actually was living in the United States, here where I live today, because I was part of the Israeli startup nation. I was a computer scientist and an engineer, and I moved to the United States with a big company called Amdocs. And at 40, I always joked that I had a little house that was a little bigger than this, and a little car that was a little bigger than this, and a wonderful family, my wife and my 3 kids. And this company that moved me to the United States, I was a VP in a multi-billion-dollar company, managing over 5,000 people. My life was great. If you asked me, "Hey, Tal, how are you doing?" I would say, "Fine." Not a bullseye fine, but things are fine. But if you would really become closer to me and I opened up and I was more vulnerable, I said, sometimes it's fine. And sometimes it's okay. And sometimes I'm very confused. I felt like I was a mixed bag of a lot of ideas. I never really integrated what is supposed to be the good and what I felt like. What I loved was never the most important thing in my life, because the most important thing in my life should have been doing the right things. So there was a kind of a separation between the good, what society tells you to do, what religion tells you to do, and the way I felt about things. There was some kind of a misalignment. And honestly, I was stuck philosophically. And in many cases, I felt guilty for that. I felt like I'm not living a virtuous life. I was not a religious person because, I guess, of the influence of the kibbutz, like my other friends from the city. I did not want to adopt the, let's say, the leftist code of morals that your life belongs to some kind of an entity called the common good. And then something happened. I read this book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. It was recommended to me by an employee of mine, and she said, in that meeting that we just had, you spoke like an Ayn Rand hero. You are so sure of yourself, and you know exactly, and I really admire that about you. And I said, who's Ayn Rand? And she said, seriously, you haven't never heard of Ayn Rand? I mean, you have to read her. And then she bought me a book called Atlas Shrugged. It was on my nightstand for about 3 months because it's 1,100 pages. It's like 3 books thick. And from the minute I opened the first page of that book, I could see that there's something very different about the author who wrote this book. He's bringing what I call a moral clarity to the writing in ways that I never understood. She showed me a different way of looking at reality, understanding the human condition. What are we about? What is the purpose of our lives? What does work and creation have to do with happiness? And then she put the best case for liberty and capitalism, because I loved what I've seen in the United States. Moving from Israel to the United States, I felt like suddenly my life is mine. Nobody's in my face. Nobody's telling me what to do. Nobody's taking 50% of everything that I own. I can do whatever I want. Everything is easier and cheaper, and people are nicer to me. They say, have a great day. And I loved the concept of liberty. I started studying the American history of liberty, where those ideas came from, the whole Enlightenment era. And I really started to get more and more fascinated with Rand's perspective of liberty, of why we need freedom. And she gave me a whole view of human happiness, the thing that is so elusive and is supposed to be subjective. We all have our own happiness. Who knows what happiness is? She gave me a perspective. I went through a whole, deep dive into Rand's philosophy. I read everything that Rand ever wrote. Her other book that I really recommend, called The Fountainhead, if you know the story about the uncompromising architect. And I started to change my beliefs dramatically. I started to understand and integrate the moral case for liberty, the moral case of why societies that allow humans to be more individualistic, to choose their own path, a separation of government and everything, is the best option, including state and church. And as Ayn Rand would have chosen, separation of state and economics. And I started to get more and more interested. As a result, by the way, I left my company, started a software company in the Silicon Valley. We grew it for about 270 employees. We sold it for a lot of money in the Silicon Valley in 2018. And she actually made me much richer because I knew what I wanted to do. She guided me really well morally. And but I was still very concerned on what I was seeing going around me. So let me be very blunt. I was given a permission to be very blunt and straightforward. We are losing. Every one of us that is for freedom, every one of us that is for freer markets, every one of us that wants to see more liberty, more individualism, more capitalism in the world, is losing heavily. We are falling on our face over and over again, and we're completely out-strategized by the left and by a different moral code that is putting forward a better strategy. And I want to explain why we're losing. So it's not just in Australia. I know you guys are very focused, as you should be, in what's going on in Australia. It's not about what happened in COVID. And I've done a little bit of homework of what's going on. And I've said in CPAC that I've never seen anything like this when I read this. And it has to be a statement from the heart, because any reasoning mind would not come up with such an idea. But instead of bashing the left and bashing the politicians, I want to offer you a deeper dive for you to maybe question some of your deeply held premises. And I want to start with an Ayn Rand quote from a book. This is an essay she wrote in a book called Philosophy Who Needs It, that I really recommend as well, when she explains why we all need philosophy. We cannot ignore philosophy. She gives us an idea of how to approach strategically a political battle. She says, if you're seriously interested in fighting for a better world, begin by identifying the nature of the problem. The battle is primarily intellectual and philosophical, not political. Politics is the last consequence, the practical implementation of the fundamental ideas that dominate a given nation's culture. So imagine that you live in an island and politics is everything that you see around you. The politics, the other people, how everybody behaves, the laws that are passed, the norms, the culture, the art, and so on and so forth. But really, what you are standing on, if you zoom out, you see that what you're seeing is just what's happening. And in philosophy, there are 5 branches. One is not mentioned here. I'm going to talk about 4 of them. So the things you see every day around you is politics. But politics is a result of something deeper, which is people want to be good and do what they believe is going to make the world a better place. Everyone is very, very serious, even if they don't say that explicitly. Implicitly, they hold beliefs that are their moral compass. And that is based on an ethical foundation, which is asking the question, what is the good? But that's not the end of it, because knowing what's good is based on a deeper question, which is what is true. If you want to understand why 2 and 2 can be 5, when you ask today, let's say a critical race theory professor in any kind of a philosophy or humanities department in the Ivy, or as we call it, the Poison Ivy League universities in the United States, they start by saying you cannot know what truth is. We don't have the capacity to know what truth is. Listen to, Immanuel Kant. Listen to Plato. Listen even to the religious-based epistemologies, which tell you you don't have the power to know everything. You have to have a revelation. You have to move from knowing to faith-based knowing, which is believe it because somebody said so. So what is true? And in a more fundamental way, what is real? Are we here? Or is this just, you hear even people on the left, people on the right, it's like, maybe this is all an illusion. So if you have read some Plato, maybe we're all in a cave, not really. Or if you read some Kant, is it the phenomenal or the other worlds that we cannot perceive with our senses? So there are layers and layers of questions that, if you really want to understand where it all starts, it starts in metaphysics and epistemology, and as a result in ethics. Now, I won't take you to more of a technical philosophy. I just want to ask the question about ethics. The reason why we're losing the fight is because the left has won the ethical war. Think about the fact that the left has the moral high ground because they are the good doers. They're for the common good. They want to lift everyone. And just if you've seen the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump yesterday, she won the debate hands down because finally somebody can talk a little bit of ethics. She crushed him when it came to, I want to help everyone. You're the greedy capitalist. We are for the environment. You are selfish. We are for nonprofit. You are for profit. So, of course, we have the moral high ground. I want to talk about how to defend this problem by rediscovering individualism and through a new code of morality that Ayn Rand is proposing. It's a new code of morality. For some reason, in everything else, in technology and business, we expect innovation. In the world of ideas, is like, don't touch it. Somebody said something 5,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, whatever, 400 years ago, we are not going to question that. So Ayn Rand is an innovator. She created a new operating system for humans. And she's one of the only 4 people in the human history that created a full system of philosophy. The first one was Plato. The second one was Aristotle. The third one was Immanuel Kant, who created what we call today the left, and Ayn Rand. So if you know a little bit of Ayn Rand, when she means rational self-interest, it says nothing about love. It says nothing about, it says a lot, by the way. It says it's not the opposite. Sorry, I should have said. It doesn't mean that being rationally self-interested doesn't mean you can love people passionately. I love a lot of people passionately. I have romantic love. I have family. I have community. It says nothing about compassion and the ability to be compassionate and to understand other people's struggles. It doesn't even tell you not to be philanthropic, although there's a strawman attack on Ayn Rand always saying that she's a greedy capitalist and kind of a dog-eat-dog market that she's promoting. The opposite is true. She is for benevolence. She is for human prosperity. She is for philanthropy, but voluntary. She is giving us the foundation of how to defend the politics, how to defend our countries from ideas that can bring it down. And again, if you really want to understand why they say that 2 and 2 is 4 could be racist, you really need to understand their perspective and their epistemological perspective in order not just to ridicule, but I understand what's going on. Let me play you a clip, and for a second I will reshare this with voice so you can hear it. What the 2 of the most influential people in technology say today about the nature of truth. So here's Sam Altman. I don't know if you know the guy. He's a very well-known interviewer, interviewing Sam Altman, who's the creator of ChatGPT and OpenAI, about the nature of truth. And pay attention to this very smart, left-leaning technology innovator talking about truth. Now, think about ChatGPT as something that is supposed to tell you the truth, and listen to their discussion about truth for a second.
As internal factual performance benchmark. There's a lot of cool benchmarks here. How do you build a benchmark for what is true? What is truth, Sam Altman?
Like math is true, and the origin of COVID is not agreed upon as ground truth.
Those are the 2 things.
And then there's stuff that's like certainly not true. But between that first and second milestone, there's a lot of disagreement.
What do you look for? Where can not even just now, but in the future, where can we as a human civilization look to for truth?
What do you know is true? What are you absolutely certain is true?
I have generally epistemic humility about everything, and am freaked out by how little I know and understand about the world. So that even that question is terrifying to me. There's a bucket of things that have a high degree of truthiness, which is where you put math, a lot of math.
Yeah. Can't be certain, but it's good enough for like this conversation. We can say math is true.
Yeah.
I want to pause here. So if you really try to understand what's going on here, those are 2 very smart people saying we cannot be sure that anything is true. This is basically a philosophy of Immanuel Kant that says skepticism, or David Hume. We cannot be certain of what is true. Things can change every day. We cannot trust our senses. We cannot trust our reasoning mind. There are some truths because we need to build technology. So let's say math and physics is true, but anything else, who knows? And just imagine what it means for someone to build an engine that is supposed to answer question with thinking that the world is a skeptic heaven, which is tomorrow, who knows if the sun will rise tomorrow? We cannot be sure. We cannot understand, principles, and we should have epistemic humility, as he's saying there. So that was just a diversion, just to tell you this problem goes very, very deep, not just with crazy leftists, but I was part of the community of the Silicon Valley for 5-6 years, and this is everywhere. The reason why the leading people in technology are leaning to the left is because they are brought up as skeptics when it comes to epistemology and subjectivists when it comes to ethics. And then they have the ultimate conclusion is they have to be the good doers and for the common good politically. It's just so why liberty? Let me ask you this: why do we need liberty? So the libertarians will tell you the non-aggression principle, and Ayn Rand is anything but a libertarian. People confuse her to be a libertarian. Some people say, wait, it works. The Austrian economics shows that capitalism works. Are you crazy? Why are we going to socialism? It doesn't work. And this argument doesn't work. Ayn Rand gives a whole different perspective on the need for liberty. It's not because it makes us more money and it makes everybody prosper. Who cares if it makes us prosper? It's not good. This is what the left is saying. So give up a little bit of what you make, you greedy capitalists, and let's tax you as much as possible because we have a common good that we need to serve. Ayn Rand has a completely different perspective on why we need liberty. She goes deep into the nature of the human or the human condition. She looks at entities and she looks at living beings, and she's asking the question, what is the means of survival? What is the nature of every living thing? If you observe every living thing, the squirrel, I love squirrel, they're here in my backyard, they have a nature. You can see what squirrel is a thriving squirrel and what squirrel that is scarred and sick. And you can see that death and life is the ultimate, two states that a living thing can be in. And if the living thing is performing the activities that are demanded by its nature, it will thrive. And if it doesn't, it will die. So if you live, a squirrel in the forest, it will know exactly what to do. His morality is ingrained and burnt into his mind, and he is, in a way, pre-programmed to come into this world and know exactly how to live a squirrel life. If you drop this, human being in a forest, it will not know what to do. It will not know what its means of survival. If a pack of wolves will get, happen to adopt it, it will think it's a wolf, or it will die, not knowing what to do. But something about this organism, this human animal, this rational animal, makes it control the world with the power of what? The power of its means of survival. But the means of survival of the human being needs to be discovered, needs to be developed. And I won't take you through the whole idea here, but just to summarize it, Ayn Rand concludes that reason, man's essential characteristic, is his rational faculty. Man's mind is its basic means of survival, is only means of gaining knowledge. So again, it's a pretty bald statement that she's making, that our means of survival is our reasoning mind. Our means of survival is concept formation. What you're seeing here are entities that no other organism other than the human mind can see as one entity or one group of entities connected by what we call a concept. And she has a whole theory of concept formation. And if she reverse engineers the process by which you decide that a table is a table, and what defines a table, and how to create objective concepts, which is putting Plato out of business, because she shows how Plato's world of form is completely false. She goes with Aristotle and builds on Aristotle a completely different view of the human mind and the human condition. Another thing she is concluding is that if you see how minds operate, if you can see how people get to think and to make decisions, there's a prerequisite, which is we need to be free to do that. You cannot learn under the threat of a gun. You cannot do math. You cannot think for yourself if you are threatened with force, a punch in the face, or a bat on, hitting your head. So when we ask the question freedom, we should ask the question freedom from what? Freedom for what? And the answer from what is from force, from a fist, from a gun, and from people not allowing you to do what you need to do, which is to express yourself, to think and to speak in order to form concepts, in order to exercise your reasoning faculty. And another subtle ways of us destroying the faculty of reasoning is to lie to someone, to depart, to make a separation between them and reality by saying, hey, you see this is made out of gold. I'm going to sell it to you for $1,000, and then you realize it's not. That's a way to destroy humans' capacity to do fraud, to threaten you with a gun, to commit to things. Basically, if you think about what force is separating cause and effect, is not allowing you to keep the efforts of your work and think for yourself and decide for yourself how you want to live your life. And she says in another, actually her intellectual heir, Dr. Leonard Peikoff, writes in a beautiful book that explains Nazi Germany better than any other book in the world. He says, force is the antonym, a negation of thought. Understanding is not produced by a punch in the face. Intellectual clarity does not flow from the muzzle of a gun. The weighing of evidence is not mediated by spasms of terror. The mind is a cognitive faculty. It cannot achieve knowledge or conviction apart from or against its perception of reality. It cannot be force. This explains why in every society that accepts the protection of individual rights, humans flourish. And in any society that negates your freedom to think, your freedom to act, to keep the property and the fruits of your labor, we die slowly. And to the extent you go with the founding fathers of America, who are the sons and grandsons of an enlightenment of thinking in the world of philosophy and political philosophy, we thrive. So it's not because God said we should be capitalists, or we hate the leftist socialists, and socialism and communism just doesn't work. It's not doesn't work. It cannot work because we're humans. We're not ants. We're not birds. We're not snails. We are humans, and our means of survival requires freedom. And the manifestations of those freedoms is what we call human rights. So freedom for what, by the way? What are we trying to achieve? Because the communists can tell you exactly what they're trying to achieve. The Hamas can tell you exactly what they're trying to achieve. What we are trying to achieve is human prosperity, is human expression. And the Industrial Revolution, even the best of the people who invented the idea or the concept of individual rights could not have imagined what would happen if you just left people alone. We went from huts to skyscrapers in about 70, 80 years when we were as close to laissez-faire capitalism as we were in the 19th century. So I won't go into the very deep and amazing conclusions that Ayn Rand has about what human happiness requires, but I'll give you just the kind of overall statement, and then I'll finish with that. She says, happiness well, actually, Aristotle started saying that happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. And if you want to understand Rand's view of happiness, she says, happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievements of one's values. And she argues rational values. And so she built a whole new perspective on what kind of values, through what kind of virtues should man pursue in order to express his humanity and to live and thrive as a human being. So I will jump to the end here. I will go back to Rand that says, in an intellectual battle, you do not need to convert everyone. History is made by minorities, or more precisely, history is made by intellectual movements, which are created by minorities. If you think about every, what has moved us from ancient Greece and Rome and how they fell to the barbarians, how we had the Dark Ages for millennia, only for Thomas Aquinas to rediscover Aristotle, bring him back, a very small minority that sparked the Renaissance, which led to the Enlightenment, which led to the concept of freedom and the manifestation of that idea through the United States of America. And how in the same day that America is born, same year that America is born, Immanuel Kant brings back Plato, gives us a new way of looking at the world from a mystical, a subjective viewpoint, which leads to the left, which leads to Karl Marx, which leads to communism and the bloodiest century. This is a 1-minute lesson of philosophical view of human history. And the reason why we're declining right now, because we have the wrong philosophy. And she says, who belongs to those minorities? Anyone who's able and willing actively to concern himself with intellectual issues. Here, it is not the quantity, but quality that counts, the quality and the consistency of the ideas one is advocating. So I recommend that you read Rand's both fiction and nonfiction, especially if you're interested in politics. Read Ayn Rand's Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. I would start with Ayn Rand's Philosophy, Who Needs It? It's all free of charge. We are giving away those books for free. And I invite you to a conference that is going to be held, I think it's December 6th to 8th in Brisbane. We will bring the best objectivists. By the way, I didn't mention, but Ayn Rand called her philosophy objectivism, talking about the epistemological aspect of her philosophy, which is objectivity. And the best philosophers and thinkers in objectivism will be in Brisbane, December 6th to 8th. And other news that I just want to share with you, if you are Ayn Rand fans, we're building an unbelievable, beautiful architectural marvel that is going to be the Ayn Rand Center in Austin, Texas. It's going to be shaped as a book that shines light into the culture. And if you're interested in knowing more, you can always visit AynRand.org and learn more about her. With that, I will pause. I know that I've made a lot of comments, a lot of propositions. I had a lot of propositions here, and I would love to get your questions or maybe disagreements. Thank you for listening, and I'll open it up.
Thank you very much. Just before, I'll mention as well, in conjunction with the conference, which is being held in December 6th to 8th, AJA will be hosting Dr. Yaron Brook. That is on Monday, December 9th in the evening. So please save the date. That will be in Sydney. We apologize to all our Melbourne supporters. That is a Sydney event. Put that in your diaries now. Save the date, Monday, December 9th, Dr. Yaron Brook, who will be talking about Israel's modern war. We'll head to our president, Dr. David Adler, quickly, and then Tal, if we could ask you after David's done his quick presentation, just a couple of your thoughts on the current situation in Israel, please.
Would love to.
Okay, everyone, as we always do at the end of the event, please do something to actively support AJA. Make sure you go to the website, jewishassociation.org.au. You can make a donation, make sure you've subscribed to the email list, and certainly follow our social media during the week, where there are multiple updates and breaking news happening all the time. And next week, we have Senator Holly Hughes joining us, one of our good friends in Parliament. Was scheduled a few weeks ago, but had a sudden health episode that caused the postponement of this. And we'll be discussing a range of issues: Israel policy, anti-Semitism, Labor's shift, the Teals and the Greens, basically nothing off limits for us to get insights from a good friend in our Parliament. And I thought that Tennille, foreshadowing, to invite your comments, Tal, on the situation in Israel. And I was thinking during part of your presentation, when you started talking about values, that infamous line that we hear from Hamas: "We value death as you value life." So a completely different approach. So I'd be very interested in your perspective, and I know you've just returned from a trip to Israel. Any insights you can give us?
Yeah, so I came back from Israel several weeks ago. I have a daughter who lives in Tel Aviv, served in the army, and I consider myself an Israeli and an American. I have to say that, and I was interviewed by many podcasts and other venues, TV, and so on. And I think Israel is experiencing, it is at the forefront of a war of civilizations. We make it a war on religion. It's not a war on religion. It's a war on complete philosophies of what you just mentioned, David, which is a philosophy that, sanctifies death versus a philosophy that sanctifies life. My perspective is that if we don't understand that they are serious about what they say, don't take it lightly. Israelis have, since the 60s, are not willing to hear what the enemy is telling them. We are out to kill you. How can you negotiate reason with someone who tells you, I'm going to kill you? On a personal level, you would understand that very, very easily. But for some reason, if we're talking about millions of people, then all logic is out the window. If I told each and every one of you that I'm coming to your home to kill you and to kill your kids and grandkids, would you negotiate with me? Or would you take out your gun and shoot me the minute I actually turn my threats into action? And so in order to understand, and this is where a lot of people don't understand Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is for life. And the whole idea of individual rights is a contract that we have between people who agree that life is our purpose. If you are outside of that domain, you don't have individual rights. You don't have the right for food. You don't have the right for anything. You should be killed. The easiest way and the fastest way to end a war is if you have an immoral enemy like Nazi Germany or imperialist Japan, you go out, like America had the backbone, the moral backbone, in World War II, to go out to say, you are wrong. I'm going to kill you until you get on your knees, say enough is enough. I'm done with my ideas. I surrender my ideas. Not the next thing. I surrender the idea of killing you. And so I'm going to come to you. I'm going to tell you how to live. And the martial law and General MacArthur, what did they do when they said nation building? Why was it good when we did it to Germany and to Japan, and we cannot do it to the Palestinians? We should, in a way, take over, teach the kids, their kids, what it means to live in a free society that is for life. Anyone that violates human rights goes to jail, and we exterminate their leadership. The problem is that Israel doesn't have the moral fortitude or understanding or clarity to do it. America doesn't have the clarity anymore. And they're playing a pragmatist idea of like, let's negotiate, let's bring back the hostages. That's what's important. No, you're fighting for your life as a free nation. And by the way, talk all you want about Israel being the Jewish state. It's a state for Jews. If you listen to Theodore Herzl, who's the founder of the person who had the idea of Israel, and if you read his books, he says it's not a Jewish state. It's not a religious state. It's a free state for Jews. He says specifically, you should separate religion from state. It's not a religious state. And to the extent that the Israelis have adopted that view, which is exactly the view of the founding fathers of America, it thrived. To the extent that we're taking the same path of Hamas, which is to try to make Israel a religious country, we will fail. So Israel is a free state. Australia is a free state. And to the extent that we make it the more free and to protect itself from a moral foundation of anyone who's against individual rights doesn't have individual rights, and we're out to kill them. And so my view is that Israel should get into Gaza and the West Bank and half of Lebanon if needed. It should completely annihilate Iran to the point where Iran is disarmed. It should activate all of its weapons. If you think that Israel cannot destroy Iran in about 2 weeks, you're wrong. I've been to the Israeli army. I know exactly what we have. It's a moral fault. It's not a political fault. And Benjamin Netanyahu should read his own books where he says we don't negotiate with terrorists. We should annihilate our enemies if they're out to get us. And he just forgot. So you see, it's a very radical view. It's a view that is for freedom. It's a view that is for individual rights and for an uncompromising upholding individual rights in a very uncompromising. I am, with my views, is tagged as an extreme right. Not at all. You cannot put me on this one-dimension grid of right and left. I think both are wrong. I think the right is left with its mystical view of the world and thinking we should be a religious state, and the left is wrong, thinking that everybody is the same and equivocate our view, our way of life with who knows, maybe the Palestinians are right. We should give them human rights. They don't understand human rights. So both the right and the left are wrong about politics. I think we should just extract the truth, which is humans need freedom. Freedom in a political realm means individual rights and the monopoly of force by the government. The government's only role in a free society is the army, the police, and the courts to make sure that we don't use violence. And that monopoly on force should be unleashed on anyone from the inside and from the outside who's out to get us. And this is why we should annihilate anyone who's out to get us. I don't want to kill every Palestinian in Gaza. Up to the point, I will kill everyone up to the point where they say enough is enough. And you can hear those voices, by the way. You just take out the 5% that controls Gaza, the 5% that controls Iran, and you see the 95% telling you, we want to live. We want to live. Free us from those dictators. We want to live. This is why everyone is flocking to the freest countries in the world from everywhere there. So very easy. I'm, of course, exaggerating here, but it's not that complicated to end this once and for all if Israelis would have a moral backbone to understand that their culture is superior to the cultures around them because it's free, because they're following the American founding fathers and the ideas of the Enlightenment. And true, it should be the safe haven for Jews. That's the purpose of Israel. Jewish people from all over the world should have the right to come back and do an aliyah to Israel. That is the nature of this country, which is very different. So I'm not against, Jewish people in Israel. I just think that over time, Israel should be a state for all its citizens, including the Arabs, including the Christians, including the Armenians, including the Druze. Everybody should be equal. And if the right doesn't understand that everybody should be equal, then it has lost the moral high ground and the left will take over and will self-destruct like we're doing right now. If you think that the right in Israel is right, you're wrong. The Israel is half left. Even Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't have the moral fortitude to say we're going for war, we're going all in, and we're going to destroy whoever wants to kill us. So this is my radical view of how Israel should fight.
Thank you. With that, we'll take some quick questions. Alan, please unmute.
Yes, thanks. Very quickly, thanks, Tal. I'm feeling somewhat overwhelmed by all this philosophy, but I just wanted to ask you, where does religion fit into Ayn Rand's thinking, and I suppose in particular Judaism?
Yes. So Ayn Rand identifies that if you read her book, Philosophy Who Needs It, she says, you need philosophy. Religion is philosophy. Religion answers the four more, or three, let's call it three most important, actually four most important questions of life. Like, where are we? How do we know it? What is the good? And how do we live as a society? And if you think about what religion does, it gives you answers to all those questions. Now, she says, as with every human domain of human knowledge, you have progress over time. Thinkers over thinkers over thinkers that improve your understanding of that domain. At one point, there was no separation of science and philosophy. And you know, in Hebrew, there's this beautiful term called Madai HaRuach, which is the sciences of the spirit. This is the name for the humanities in Hebrew. And it's exactly what it should be, a science of the spirit, not a science of faith, because faith is the opposite of science. It's revelations. You believe in things because people said so. I don't. I've never, as a 6-year-old, as I said, I was fighting with my grandma about why should I believe that God exists if nobody can prove it to me? And why, by the way, the Jewish religion. So Ayn Rand says you do need a religion, but you should choose a religion that makes more sense. And if you accept that, you know, innovation should happen with this thing, you should accept that innovation should happen with ideas. Why are we running on ideas from 5,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago? Move on, learn something new. There's no reason to believe in miracles. And no matter what your religion tells you, think for yourself and try to devise those answers from your own, engaged mind. So she gives an answer on metaphysics, which we are here in this objective universe. We know it by the power of our reasoning mind and through induction. The good is human thriving. You should do everything with your rational mind to extend your life, to build a shirt, to build a microphone, to change the world in the vision in the shape of your vision. And as a society, if you really study that realm called politics, you should have individual rights with a monopoly on force extracted from, culture, societal discourse, and leave us free. So there's no place for religion in Ayn Rand's view. It's based on the wrong epistemology, which is faith. You should not have faith. You should have knowledge and certainty, because let's face it, 99% of what you do every day is based by knowledge and not by faith. And for some reason, when it comes to morality, we should change the way we think. So sorry, she doesn't give any passes to anyone who believes in anything without proof. So that's why she called her philosophy objectivism, which is like we are for objectivity, not for anything other than that.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to unmute, please?
Hi, everyone. So I guess you guys have all heard about the violent riot outside the Melbourne Exhibition Center today for Defense Land Expo, I think. So my question is this: how do we defend our civil liberty to protest when there are violent rioters and activists that are attacking people and police? Because we don't want another police state like we had during the pandemic. Any suggestions on how to defend our civil liberties while guaranteeing this public safety?
Yes, 100%. It's caused by the lack of understanding of what the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech, is all about. Freedom of speech is not your freedom to shout out anywhere you want what you believe in. Freedom of speech is just your ability or your right not to be silenced. So if you think about the First Amendment, it doesn't mean that you can congregate anywhere you want, block a road, and shout "Free Palestine." You don't have that right, because by that right, you are violating my right not to listen to you, my right to ignore you. The freedom of speech is you in your own home can say whatever you want. I am against the right. It's not a right, it's made up right for you to block main roads or bridges and interfere with what those bridges and roads were built for, which is, movement and transportation, and violate other people's property rights while you're chanting your beliefs. You can, if there's a Hyde Park or somewhere where that is designated for you to stand on a box and shout your lungs out that you think that we should free Palestine, go ahead and do it. But I have the right not to be there. And if you're taking away my right not to be there and not to listen to you, you're violating my rights. And as Ayn Rand said, in reality, there are no contradictions. It's only in your mind or your understanding of human rights. And so the freedom of speech is the freedom not to listen, the freedom not to be exposed to ideas you don't agree with. You can go rent an auditorium, pay for it, and chant all you want. So you should send the police to break up any congregation of people in any public place unless it's designated for that, and then you have the right not to be there. They don't have the right to block your car or be interfering with business or your way to work. That's not the right for speech. The right for speech is just the right not to be silenced.
Thank you. We'll go to our final question as we come to the close of the evening. Jeff, please unmute.
Shalom. Tell me something. How come you blokes haven't been cancelled, to use a clumsy socialist phrase of the anarchists, the modern day generation of crypto communism? How come they haven't got to you yet? I wish you good luck in keeping out of their clutches, but it fascinates me. There have been so many forms of anarchism through the ages, starting from Marx and Engels, and now you teach me about Kant, which is quite enlightening. So tell me, how have you gone in the social area? Have they attempted to get to you yet?
Yeah, we get death threats to our institute. Nothing, and I think that if the left was smarter, because they're not very smart, they're smarter than a lot of right-leaning philosophers these days, but they're not very smart. They would identify that Ayn Rand poses the most serious threat to the left, and she's going to crush them. This is why a lot of right-leaning politicians are attracted to Ayn Rand, because they sense that she's bringing an argument on a moral basis that nobody else brings, not even the Austrian economics. Ayn Rand, by the way, don't confuse Ayn Rand with libertarianism. Libertarianisms tend to be what we call subjectivists as well. They in a way deteriorate to anarchism. If you want anarchism, just go to Africa. So the innovation of the Enlightenment was so profound that people don't really understand what it was. They figured out that our lives is ours. That in order to prosper, we need to leave you alone to pursue your own happiness, because you have no idea what happiness means to me. You have no idea what my values are. You have no idea what I love doing in my spare time, or the kind of impact I want to make in the world. This is why nobody can tell me how to live my life. This is why you take away the king the rabbi who will tell you what and how to live. You take everybody out. We delegate all of the rights that we have as human beings into a monopoly of force called the government that has one purpose and one purpose only. This is why Ayn Rand advocates for a separation of state and religion, and state and economics, and state and culture, and state and everything other than force. and of course the judicial. Now, objective law is very complicated. Don't get me wrong. This is very complicated to implement. But we are getting death threats. We are getting, if you meet Yaron Brook in Sydney, Yaron was raided by Antifa people many, many times. I mean, we are not liked, to say the least. By the way, we're not liked by the right as well. The right doesn't like us because of our view, our secular view of the world. It just happens that the right is more aligned politically with objectivism than the left, because the right is usually for more freedom. But do you think that Donald Trump, sorry that I'm going to American politics because I know that, do you think that Donald Trump is for freedom? He's not. He's a complete statist. He wants to take your taxes away. He wants to tell you what to do. He wants to tell you how to live, and not mention even the word that starts, that nobody wants to talk about, which is abortion rights. And so he's not for liberty. Kamala Harris is not for liberty. And no one is for liberty. Not even the libertarian candidate that nobody knows his name is for liberty. Nobody understands liberty. You want to go to liberty, go back to Jefferson. Read Jefferson, read the founding fathers, understand why Jefferson chose to become the president of the United States, where he saw that even the first president didn't get it. So liberty is hard to understand. It's a human achievement, the greatest human achievement ever. It's not the iPhone. It's not going to space. It's liberty. But it needs to be properly understood. So I urge all of you to spend more time thinking about what it is that you're fighting for and how do we implement that. But to your question, we are hated viciously by the left. And here how they are smart. You know, Gandhi said once, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. And so objectivism is in the realm of getting out of they ignore you to they ridicule you. They're now ridiculing Ayn Rand. Everything you hear about Ayn Rand, by the way, don't believe it. It's all strawman attacks about her. Read her if you want to understand Ayn Rand. And then hopefully it will very soon move from ridicule you to fighting us. When will they fight us? They will lose every time. Just watch Yaron Brook debating, he's the chairman of the board, debating any other philosopher, and put your thinking cap and try to understand who he fights people on the right, he debates people on the left, and he's making arguments that just make more sense every time.
Tal, thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for tonight. At HAA, we are always big advocates for more education, expanding your knowledge, and it was such a pleasure to have such an incredible experience tonight. Differences of opinion. I can see in the chat there's been debate and questions, and that is exactly what we love to see. We love to see debate. We love to see people asking questions, learning more. And we really thank you for your time and for joining us this evening. I'd like to let everyone know this was recorded. You can find the recording on our YouTube channel or Facebook page. Please share with your family and friends and expand their knowledge too. If you'd like any more information about the conference in December, you're welcome to email me and I can pass on the details, as well as keep a lookout in our newsletter and on our socials about the event with Dr. Yaron Brook, Israel's Moral War, December 9th, and we'll be sending more details about that in the coming weeks. Tal, thank you very much again. It's been a pleasure and good evening.
Thank you very much, everyone.